Blessings and welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. This is not the Halloween edition where I'm trying to make myself look scary. And I don't know if you just heard that. We're in the midst of this huge thunderstorm. And the lights are not out, but everything is really dark. And usually, in most of my videos, I don't depend on a lot of lighting in the house. I depend on the light that comes from these two windows. So bear with me. Today we're in Ezekiel chapters 43 through 45. Incredible read. A lot of information about the Levites, which to me translates over to basically duties and responsibilities of what law enforcement should be doing. So let's get into it. Chapter 43. God takes Ezekiel and he shows him the temple, and yesterday we talked about the measurements. Today it starts off with talking about the east gate. And in God's economy, some numbers are special. The number 7, the number 3, the number 12, the number 40. But as far as directions go, the direction of east is the most prominent direction in the Bible. The Garden of Eden faced east. The main gate for the New Jerusalem here faces east, and God enters the temple through the east gate. And even when we get down into chapter 44, in verse 3, it basically gives a prophecy that the east gates will be closed because God came through them. But they will be reopened and Jesus will walk through the east gates. Now, this is a prophecy of his second coming, but it's not a prophecy that you hear people talk about that they're looking to. And I think because this prophecy may be fulfilled so far, beginning signs that Christ has returned. But back to
chapter 43. Verses 7 and 8, God tells Ezekiel that his temple is holy, and that Israel had defiled it. And so that's why God's anger burned and his wrath came upon them, because they defiled the temple. And he allowed it to be completely destroyed. So when he builds this, or he shows Ezekiel this new temple, it will be holy. And he said, I will not let anybody profane it. And yesterday's very last verse in chapter 42, it said he measured it on the 4 sides. It had a wall all around the length, 500, and the length was 500 and the width 500, to divide the holy and the profane. Everything inside God's temple will be holy, and his feet will be planted in that temple. Then we see in chapter 43, verse 12, the design and how God has planned this out. And we talked about design and God yesterday and his plans. But when I was reading this today, it was really cool because I thought of Jesus in his first miracle when he was in Canaan. And his mom told him they'd run out of wine. His mom told him to go help them and to make new wine. And so Jesus did. And whenever I get to that lesson, I read that, I think, man, that must have been the most incredible wine ever made. Because man made wine, yeah, but Jesus made wine, the best ever, period. Perfect. So when I think about this design and this plan for this temple, this building was perfect and holy. Think of the grandest building you've ever seen or you've ever been to, and it can't compare with this temple that God has laid out. But cool thought. Then it gets into the line of Levitical priests from Zadok will minister before God in this temple. But God says, even though you Levites, you sinned and you will be punished for it, but I still have a duty, a ministry, and a responsibility for you to carry out in this temple. And he just starts listing a bunch of things. In chapter 44, verse 11, it says, they shall be ministers in my sanctuary, having oversight at the gates of the house and ministering in the house. So the Levites are going to be the guards at the gate. I mean, they're the law enforcement there, but they're all still doing their ministry duties inside. Chapter
44 verse 17, the Levites have a specific uniform that sets them apart from everybody else. What other profession do you know? Oh, law enforcement does that. That's right. Um, and it's very specific about their uniforms. And they even have lockers, like a police locker room, where they're supposed to go in at the end of their shift and take this uniform off and leave it. And they're not supposed to go out in their uniform. It's to be worn while they're on duty only, not to just be worn casually around town. It's supposed to be kept neat and clean, like law enforcement uniforms are. In chapter 44, verse 21, there's no drinking on duty. Chapter 44:23, moreover, and I love this part, they shall teach my people the difference between holy and profane, and cause them to discern between unclean and the clean. Through our enforcement actions and discernment, whether or not we give this person a ticket or we let this one go because we think they've learned a lesson, our jobs are very similar. We are to teach people the rules and the laws, and sometimes the best way to teach that is by giving somebody a break and gaining voluntary compliance, as it were. Then chapter 44, verse 25, it says, in a dispute, it's still talking about the Levites, they shall make their stand to judge. They shall judge it according to my ordinances. They shall also keep my laws and my statutes in my appointed feast and sanctuaries, or in my appointed feast, and sanctify my Sabbath. The Levites are supposed to stand up for what's right. Even though the population may be going the other direction, the Levites are supposed to stand up for what's just and what's right. And we know that same responsibility is placed on law enforcement today. I got to hurry it up. In chapter 45, talks about the Levites living off the taxes, if you will, of the people of Israel. Even the land they live on is given to them as a portion for them to live on from the population. It's a taxed land. So, great lesson today. I hope you had a chance to read it. There's some points that I'm not even going to get to today because there's so many left. Tomorrow we're in Ezekiel chapter 46 through 48. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more lit in here. But you guys, in the meantime, be safe.